Tastefully convey value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Club. Today we're going to interpret the novel Little Women for you. People often say that a so called classic is a book everyone praises but few actually read. And The Little Women we're discussing today is also such a classic. But due to its widespread readership and popularity, it's hailed as a true popular classic novel, divided into two volumes. The first volume was published in 1868 and sold out immediately upon release. So, publishers were swamped with orders, and printing houses worked day and night, but still couldn't keep up with demand. So, just 3 months later, author Louisa May Alcott released the second volume. Later, she also wrote the sequel, Little Men. By the end of the 19th century, Little Women had become an established classic, and Louisa joined the ranks of American literary greats like Thoreau, Emerson, and Whitman. So, Little Women tells the story of four sisters growing up in a New England family during the 1860s. At that time, America was in the midst of the Civil War, the greatest catastrophe since the nation's founding. But instead of depicting the war directly, the novel focuses on the sisters' daily lives, relationships, and emotional worlds. For American readers suffering post war economic depression and scarcity, this warm, harmonious female led family, unaffected by external turmoil, represented the middle class ideal, offering them spiritual comfort. Readers worldwide also found resonance in Little Women. Shortly after publication, it was translated into over 50 languages and circulated globally. It's been adapted into films, TV series, musicals, and operas. At over 400,000 characters long, Little Women centers on the March family living in Concord, Massachusetts. The family story begins in 1861, the first year of the Civil War. The first volume follows Mr. March serving with the troops, while the mother and four daughters manage life at home. The second volume explores the sisters' individual lives and destinies after the Civil War. We discover the youngest sister, Amy, is only 10, the oldest, Meg, just 16, with second daughter Jo and third daughter Beth also being teenagers. But why do readers call them Little Women? Once we read the story, we understand that the four girls show little childish immaturity and appear more mature than their peers. The novel opens on Christmas Eve with the four sisters complaining to each other that the family is too poor and their father is away with the army, so they won't get any Christmas presents this year. But then they recall their mother's words. During wartime, they should cut back on entertainment expenses. So they think about whether they should buy their mother a new pair of slippers. Finally, Meg, the eldest, announces that as the oldest sister, she has the duty to take the lead in contributing money. Let's each buy Mom a Christmas gift and get nothing for ourselves. Finally, their mother appears and reads a letter from their father at the front, affectionately calling the four sisters Little Women. And in the letter, he enthusiastically encourages everyone. Then, on Christmas Day, their mother takes the lead in giving food and clothes to a beggar on the road. Then she has the four sisters prepare gifts together to give to a sick woman and her 6 children. We see this is a family full of love and warmth where the mother models virtues for the children and the young children are sensible, knowing, how to take responsibility for the family. As the story unfolds, we discover the four sisters each have distinct personalities, and we'll tell them separately. First, the eldest Meg always longs to be a princess, envies the rich, and sometimes feels disappointed by the family's poverty. She knows a wealthy family and was once invited to stay with them. She stayed there for 2 weeks and experienced a luxurious, quality lifestyle. The wealthy family's daughter, Belle, dressed Meg up meticulously, letting her experience what it's like to be a princess. Later, Meg heard that Belle got married in a very lavish wedding, and the newlyweds went to Paris for their honeymoon. She told her second sister, Jo, about it, and Jo astutely said, "Sis, you're jealous, aren't you?" Meg admitted sheepishly, probably. In Meg's mind, poverty is certainly not a good thing, but she also clearly understands that if she develops a habit of despising the poor and favoring the rich, that would be even worse. The second sister, Jo, is a tomboy who loves writing. She has a strong, rebellious personality, a quick temper, and always dreams of living independently. Once, Jo and the eldest Meg were invited by their neighbor boy Laurie to see a play, and they let Amy ask to come along too. That Jo refused her, and Amy, in a fit of anger, burned the novel that Jo had spent a long time writing. Jo was furious, scolded Amy harshly, and still simmering with anger. Then, while skating with Amy, she deliberately lured her into an ice hole. The moment Amy fell in, Jo suddenly realized she had gone too far and quickly rescued Amy with others. Although Amy ended up unharmed, Jo couldn't let it go. She came before her mother, sobbing uncontrollably, and said, "Why is my temper so bad? I've become so savage that I could hurt anyone and even feel happy about it. I'm really afraid that someday I'll do something terrible, ruin my life, and make everyone fear me. Mother, save me, save me." Although Jo's personality is independent and strong willed, she also understands that she must never harm others. Now, looking at the third sister, Beth, who is talented and enjoys staying home playing the piano, but she is naturally very shy and timid. Once, the neighbor, Laurie's family, invited the March sisters over. The other three girls were very happy, but Beth was too scared to go because she thought Laurie's father was fierce. Laurie's father deliberately mentioned that their family's piano hadn't been played for a long time and asked if any girl would like to come play it to help tune it. Upon hearing this, Beth gathered her courage and volunteered. In the end, she not only happily visited, but also got to indulge in playing the piano, spending a delightful day. She was very grateful to Laurie's father and later made a pair of shoes as a gift for him. As for the youngest sister, Amy, she is the most spoiled, a bit vain, and has a self-centered, demanding personality. For example, as mentioned earlier, she burned Jo's novel. The sister's great aunt lives with the March family, and Amy took a liking to a turquoise ring of hers. She really wanted it. For this reason, she imitated her great aunt, becoming a devout Christian, which pleased her great aunt. Later, she really gave the ring to Amy. Although she achieved her goal, Amy clearly understood that if she only became a Christian to get the ring, it would be too vulgar and utilitarian. So she told her mother, "This ring on my hand can remind me not to be selfish. Selfishness is my biggest flaw." In life, Amy also took her mother and sisters as role models, constantly reflecting on herself. We can see that although the four sisters have different personalities, they share a common trait. They all intensely desired to grow up and to improve themselves. They never dwell on complaining about poverty, but instead constantly reflect on their own shortcomings. There are many such stories in the book where they hold themselves to adult standards, and every effort they make to improve is encouraged by elders like their mother and great aunt. And so, calling the four sisters Little Women doesn't mean they're prematurely mature, but rather highlights their intense desire and pursuit of growth and self improvement. This is precisely why the novel resonated so strongly with American readers. Many hadn't recovered from the war and economic depression, and many families had lost their male heads, making it urgent for children to become self-reliant and shoulder life's responsibilities. In 1868, after Little Women was published, Americans rushed to buy it as Christmas gifts for girls and their families, hoping they'd draw inspiration from the sisters to become responsible little women. By the end of part one, 4 years later, the war had ended and it was Christmas again. Father returned home, and the ecstatic Children immediately surrounded him, throwing themselves into his arms. Then, seeing how much the children had grown that year, father was deeply moved. The author writes, emotionally, her heart overflowed with joy. Never mind what might come next. At least for now, past bitterness was gone, leaving only sweetness. Many American families with post-war reunion experiences couldn't hold back tears when reading this passage. Um, in the book, the sisters' self-improvement is modeled after their capable, hardworking mother, and they each embody maternal qualities, often consciously playing motherly roles. For example, when mother is away, they automatically take on household chores. If they slack off, even to read or do crafts they love, they instinctively feel guilty. They earn money like mother to help support the family. Take the eldest Meg. Later, she becomes a governess, while second sister Jo tries writing submissions. They understand how to anticipate others' needs and share their burdens. For instance, when father fell ill in the army, Jo immediately cut and sold her hair for $25 and gave it to mother. Among the sisters, third sister Beth has the strongest maternal spirit. Humble, devout, selfless, always considering giving up her own interests or even sacrificing herself. At the very beginning of the story, she insisted on giving up Christmas presents to buy mom new slippers. Though always in poor health, she constantly thought of others. Even bedridden, she kept making little gifts to throw out the window to passing children. Once, when she felt she might not make it, she told second sister Jo, who to leave her most cherished possessions to, her piano, cat, doll, and even her hair. She also said she had so little to give away. For this, she felt very sorry. In the latter half of part 2, Beth passed away. This part of the novel is deeply moving. Any reader would believe such a good girl surely went to heaven. During Beth's illness, the other sisters learned to care for loved ones, especially fiercely independent Jo, who stopped obsessing over writing while nursing Beth. Through this process, she learned patience, gentleness, and developed responsibility. In her final days, when unable to sleep, Beth would leaf through her prayer book alone, softly singing hymns. Jo kept watch beside her. To Jo, Beth was calmly preparing herself for the afterlife with peaceful acceptance. Far from weeping, Jo felt the solemn beauty of life and death, experiencing spiritual purification herself. On her deathbed, Beth calmly entrusted Jo with caring for their parents. Jo promised, feeling moral responsibility well up within her. Later, she indeed kept her word. For her parents, she abandoned her world travel dreams and never neglected family for literary fame. Since Beth, the one most suited for motherhood, died young, her virtues had to be shared among the sisters. The future she never reached would be realized through them. Only then could wholeness be achieved. Thus, in part 2, Meg, Jo, and Amy married in turn, each happily, fulfilling Mrs. March's ideal in the novel. As Mrs. March said, "I hope my daughters will be beautiful, talented, respected, and adored. May they have joyful childhoods, happy marriages as adults, live meaningfully without worries, be loved by good men, and marry them. This is the greatest fortune in a woman's life." Mrs. March's words reflect both her expectations for her 4 daughters and the ideal life for women in people's minds at that time. Readers witness the protagonists perfecting themselves through virtuous living, gradually moving toward happiness, fulfillment, and peace. American readers were deeply moved. From today's perspective, this ideal life may seem tinged with traditional feminine virtue education. We see the virtues the sisters learned from their mother: caring for others, overcoming selfishness, controlling emotions, were preparations for marriage and starting families. It could even be said the family atmosphere and education subtly bound them to the fixed path of becoming wives and mothers. People at that time didn't consider alternatives. beyond the path the sisters took. Yet, the book isn't without challenges to even critiques of contemporary notions. You might find it strange, with such traditional values and idealized characters in Little Women. Where does its critical edge come from? Let's revisit Mrs. March's words. She hoped her daughters would be loved by excellent men and marry them. The implied meaning is that a happy marriage has nothing to do with wealth, status, or other external factors. Mrs. March valued love itself more, hoping her daughters' marriages would be outstanding fruits of love, not tied to wealth. She once told her daughters, "I'd rather you married a poor man as his wife than be a queen without dignity or peace." Thus, this challenged the notion that women must marry into wealthy families. This perspective was seen as refreshingly pure at the time, unconsciously resonating with readers. Looking at the marriages of the three daughters, they indeed fulfilled their mother's ideals. The eldest Meg dreamed of being a princess and living luxuriously as a child, yet she ultimately married a poor teacher. Initially, when John Brooke proposed to Meg, she didn't accept. At that point, their traditionally minded great aunt declared that if Meg married John, she'd leave Meg nothing in her will. These words, meant to blackmail Meg into abandoning John, instead ignited her rebellious spirit. He declared on the spot, "I'll only marry someone I love," and praised John highly, driving great aunt crazy, but she was deeply moved and greatly inspired. He worked harder to earn money, even moved great aunt, who not only stopped obstructing, but also gave sincere blessings at their wedding. Second sister Jo was also very close friends with John, but John marrying Meg left Jo feeling a bit down. Later, Jo met an older Professor Bear and was drawn to his kindness and talent. Bear wasn't rich, but Jo felt that helping him brought genuine joy, and others' gossip didn't matter. Later, she married Professor Bear. They lived in Vienna after marriage, loving each other, had twins, and opened a boys' school together. Youngest sister Amy once dreamed of marrying into wealth, but later she increasingly felt that character matters most. Neighbor boy Laurie had a wealthy classmate who wanted to marry Amy, even sent her on a trip abroad. And Amy once immersed herself in the fantasy. But later, Amy grew closer to Laurie, seeing him actively improve himself through interactions with the March sisters, gradually shedding his spoiled habits. He was mischievous, drank too much, wasted money, etc., but became a responsible and mature man. So Amy gave up the wealthier boy and chose Laurie. After marriage, Amy, who loved art, wanted to donate money to women with artistic talent and got strong support from Laurie. So we find that although the daughters took conventional paths as wives and mothers, their hearts were independent. None thought to use marriage to change fate overnight or rely on husbands. Moreover, ethics like family harmony, virtuous wives and mothers, sisterhood, and affection are very traditional. But author Louisa valued the beautiful human emotions in these traditions and satirized vulgar practices by defending them. The book often contrasts this. Handmade gifts from the sisters got true love, while store-bought things were ignored. Doing chores by hand brought satisfaction, whereas hiring others for chores was meaningless. After getting married, eldest sister Meg moved with her husband to a small, simple new house. Yet she personally managed the interior, using different cloths to polish different utensils, full of love for life. In contrast, Laurie sent Meg a pile of gifts, only to be mocked by her. Like feather dusters, labor-saving soap, super glue, nutmeg grinders. The book writes these were American-style innovations, novel yet impractical, and designed to target young people's eyes and wallets. Her novel tells us society is full of rapidly circulating, depreciating goods, but lasting value and happiness come from hands-on labor and the emotional dedication to family. As Little Women nears its end, the sisters reunite, again on Christmas Day. But instead of discussing gifts, they reflect on life. Though they've started families, their original family didn't dissolve, it expanded. Elders remain, joined by husbands and children. Even the conservative great aunt softened, becoming part of the family. Additionally, Meg had a capable daughter who loved managing household affairs from a young age. Amy named her own daughter Beth to honor her sister, comforting everyone that dear Beth never truly left them. She remains by everyone's side. This traditional happy ending feels entirely expected. Today, Little Women may seem overly idealistic, but in the 19th century, its significance was irreplaceable. It helped countless women lost in domestic routines regain identity, showing how to find achievement, even glory, through family and take control of their lives. After reading, we realize it's entirely about women, female perspectives, 90% female dialogue, depicting lives as women understood and desired. We see shifts occurring in the gendered world of literature and thought. By the late 19th century, Britain had female novelists like the Brontes, Jane Austen, George Eliot, authors of classics like Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, and Pride and Prejudice, shattering male literary dominance. Thus, it can be said that in America during the same period, Louisa and Little Women emerged as a positive response to this trend. Little Women is therefore hailed as one of America's earliest feminist texts. Understanding Louisa May Alcott's background makes it clear some foundational elements of Little Women come from her own family. Louisa was born in 1832. Her family also had four sisters and a devoted mother whom they all adored. Her father was an outstanding educator and philosopher who dedicated himself to advancing social reform in America. Moreover, Louisa indeed had a sister who, like Beth in the book, died young. In this family, Louisa was the second daughter and loved reading and writing from childhood. The character Jo March was essentially created as her own alter ego. Louisa infused Jo with many of her own personality traits. In the novel, Jo is a tomboy whose real name is Josephine, but she hated the femininity in that name, preferring everyone to call her by the masculine Jo. It was her boyish spirit that attracted neighbor boy Laurie, and they became close friends. Jo always took pride in her masculine traits. She once declared boldly, "I'll hold fast to my little genius and make the world yield to me again." However, feminism doesn't simply mean women joining men's ranks. In Louisa's writing, women should actively choose their lives like men, taking responsibility for themselves and their choices. Women aren't men's appendages, but individuals who control their destinies. Thus, though Jo later became a wife and mother, busy with family and parents, this was her own conscious choice, especially in marriage. Jo rejected well-qualified Laurie. Amy turned down Laurie's wealthy friend, and Meg even forfeited inheritance to control her marital agency. Meg even stated, "I won't marry just anyone. I'll marry the man I love." This fierce sense of equality is feminism's most striking expression in the book. Beyond equality, feminism means independence. Jo's writing career marked the start of her quest for autonomy. She understood that financial hardship inevitably led to lack of freedom, making her powerless to help her beloved family and sisters, especially poor sister Beth. In the novel, Jo worked tirelessly in the attic, thinking and writing. A short story she submitted finally earned her a $100 prize. She used that money to send her mother and sister Beth on a beach vacation, then repeatedly used writing fees to pay household bills and buy daily necessities. It could be said she was constantly seeking economic independence. And in reality, Louisa May Alcott did exactly that. She started writing at 20, producing horror stories, fairy tale sketches, often focusing on women's work, lives, and love. Thanks to this foundation, in 1867, she accepted an editor's invitation to write a novel for girls, Little Women, whose success finally made Louisa financially independent. Afterwards, she actively campaigned to elevate women's status. For example, the U.S. Constitution then stipulated only men could vote in public affairs. That through determined effort, Louisa became Concord's first officially registered female voter. Moreover, Little Women profoundly influenced American literature. From the 1850s, domestic novels existed but were mere popular fiction until Little Women elevated the genre to serious literature, even classic status. Later, from 1870 to 1886, Louisa wrote 5 sequels, continuing to capture precious moments in simple life that moved American readers. The ideals Louisa embodied in literature, her vision of truth, goodness, and beauty, were cherished by countless readers. All right, that concludes our interpretation of Little Women. Reading notes are below the audio. See you tomorrow.